other issues concerning creation or evolution. You may also find information on our website at creationworldview.org. There are many free articles as well as a bookstore there. What I'd like to share with you at the moment, though, deals with one of the central issues of creation versus evolution. Did humans evolve from apes as evolutionists claim? Or did, in fact, God create apes and people at the same time, 6,000 years ago? When creationists and evolutionists are talking about these things, the evolutionist often talks about what is called the road to man. So we're going to be taking a look at, quote, the road to man, unquote, question mark. Did apes really evolve into people, as this little illustration would say? Or, in fact, were people created? Now, you have to remember that when evolutionists attempt to prove human evolution, they use four categories of physical evidence in their attempt to prove that people evolved from apes. The four categories are shown here on the screen. The first category is called the proof by hoaxes. Now, what is a hoax? A hoax is a fraud, a fake. It's not real, man-made. The illustration here shows the skull fragments of a Piltdown man. Now, we'll be talking about hoaxes more, but the second category of proof is the proof here, shown by the illustration by Nebraska Man's tooth. This is the proof category, the proof by misrepresentations. Now, that particular proof is so easy to deal with. Well, what we're going to do is just spend a couple of moments on it, then we won't be bringing it up for the rest of the presentation. So, what about the tooth of Nebraska Man? It was found in the U.S. in the state of Nebraska in 1922. It was claimed to be proof of a pre-human, subhuman living at some time in the distant past in the middle of now the United States. And 3 years later, in 1925, this tooth was entered into the court record at the Scopes trial in Tennessee, the very famous what's referred to as monkey trial, as supposed proof for human evolution. However, after the trial was over in 1925, evolutionary believing anthropologists went back to the same location in Nebraska. They kept digging, and in fact they found that this was not the tooth of a pre-human, a subhuman living at some time in the middle of the United States, but was in fact the tooth of a pig. And so actually you could say that this is porcine man, or he's a real porker. But I would like to show you something about this misrepresentation. Based upon finding this one tooth, in 1922, for the Illustrated London News, well, an illustrator had actually drawn what Nebraska Man's friend or wife, I've never figured out which, his horses, his camels, and his club all looked like from one tooth, which turned out later to be that of a pig. And the fact of the matter is that recent research in Africa has indicated that, in fact, this may not be the tooth of an extinct species of pig, as was once thought, but may, in fact, be the tooth of a live pig species, but today living on the continent of Africa. So, let's think. Misrepresentations. The tooth was real. It was not a fake or fraud. It was not a forgery. The tooth was real, but it was misrepresented to begin with, and then later corrected. And so misrepresentations are simple and easy to deal with. Real evidence misrepresented to begin with, but then later corrected. The third category of proof, as shown here by the skull of this Australopithecus, is called the proof by the bones of dead apes. Now, I don't want you to be concerned about some of these large words like Australopithecus, so remember that you can always break them down. It's really quite simple if you think about it. For instance, Austral just means southern, and in, for instance, Australia, southern land. Pithecus is just an old word for ape, and so actually this big word Australopithecus simply means dead southern ape. And why were they named that? Well, they were named by Europeans. Bones first found, for instance, in Africa, and got the name of dead southern apes for that reason. The fourth category of proof, shown here by the skull of this Neanderthal, well, this is the proof by the bones of dead people. Since they were found in the 1850s, well, we have always known that they were in fact Homo sapien. Of course, there are evolutionists who want to deny this, but modern genetic research has proven that they are simply Homo sapien. They're no different than you and I. They just have a slightly different appearance, as we have great variation within the appearance of all humans. And so let's think. We have the proof by hoaxes, proof by misrepresentations, proof by the bone of dead apes, and proof the bones of dead people. And let's take a look at hoaxes. Specifically, let's take a look at Piltdown Man. Now, Piltdown Man was found in the UK in 1912 and declared to be a pre-human, subhuman living at some time in the distant past. This area is East Essex area, and, I beg your pardon, East Sussex. And, well, let's talk about Piltdown Man. Now, this is a drawing of the skull fragments of Piltdown Man as originally found. And these bones in 1912 were declared to be evidence of human evolution, taken to the British Museum of Natural History, put on display, indeed as proof of human evolution, until 1953. In 1953, real, live evolutionists, allowed the scientists to take a look at these bones, and what did they find? Well, first of all, we found that the jaw was actually that of a orangutan, probably up to 500 years old. It had been chemically stained to look old, but it was not old. The teeth, likewise, were not human, and you could actually see in the top of the teeth where they've been filed down with a modern metal file in order to look more ape-like. Here, the condyle, which is the little part of the jaw which fits up into the hinge, well, that had been intentionally broken off to make the jaw look more ape-like compared to the skull fragments. The skull fragments themselves were actually human, but there was a blow from a modern pick at the back of the skull, proving that it was not ancient. And today we now know that this is actually the skull of someone who died in medieval times. So let's think about this. This is a complete and utter fake. It's a fraud. It's a forgery. Indeed, when we take a look at the skull fragments of Piltdown Man, as you see here in this picture, today we know that it's a medieval human skull. The jaw, probably an orangutan from Borneo and approximately 500 years old. And the teeth actually are chimpanzee teeth that were filed down and inserted along with the others to kind of make the whole package. So here we have a composite hoax, and of course we've known about this since 1953. The question then became, since this was not proof of human evolution, but was in fact one of the greatest single examples of frauds in science, who had committed this fraud? Well, we were actually able to finally figure it out. The man who found them, Charles Dawson, was also the man who made them. Now, this hoax was actually known about in 1923, but was not released information until 1953. So for 30 years, evolutionists knew that this was a hoax, but covered up the evidence that it was a hoax. And finally, when it was proved to be a hoax, it was admitted. Well, let's think too about how do evolutionists attempt to prove human evolution. They use what is really the second worst method of proof in science. I would stress that this is their most favorite method of proof, but it's the second worst method of proof in science. It's called the proof by ranking. Now, what is the proof by ranking? It means to put things in a logical order or a logical sequence. For instance, here, this is a slide from Evolutionary Source. At the top, you'll see these various skulls. And what evolutionists will do is they will take very careful and meticulous measurements. They will make it look entirely scientific. But once they've made all these measurements, as you see up here, what do? They simply put it in a sequence, a logical order by size and shape, and that's all they do. Now, there's an illustration of that here at the bottom. Here you see 6 skulls, illustrations, in a sequence going from A to F. You notice that over here there's a gorilla skull inserted, but that's only for the purposes of comparison. And the A through F, there's a legend in the middle here indicating at the time that this was printed what they thought about these skulls that they were illustrating. So let's just take a look. Now, skull A down here is Australopithecus. At that time they said 500,000 to 1 million years old. Now, again, that's just dead southern ape. B is Pithecanthropus erectus, supposedly 200 to 500,000 years old. Now, C, Homo sapiens, supposedly 100 to 200,000 years old. D, Neanderthal, 50 to 100,000 years old. E, Homo sapien, variety Neanderthaliensis, about 50,000 years old. And finally, F is modern Homo sapien.